Hello, everyone. I'm Jill Berkowitz, the host of 160 Characters podcast. And today, joining us, we have Derek Curtin. Welcome.
Hi. Good to meet you, Jill. Thanks for having me.
Good to meet you too. He has years of experience in telecom. He founded the Kerton Group almost 23 years ago. I hope I got that number right, which oversees the Telecom Council of Silicon Valley, the Auto Tech Council, and the Clean Tech Council. Welcome to the show. So happy to have you. It's an
Great.
honor to be chatting with you today. Can you take us back to the origin of the Curtin Group and share some insight about these councils so we have a little background?
Sure. I graduated with an economics degree out of Canada and an MBA out of Cornell on the East Coast. But the whole time I was ambitiously trying to get towards Silicon Valley. And it was a mix of weather and technology and opportunity really brought me to Silicon Valley. And I love the mountains. I love the nicer weather and the ability to ski and go to the beach and all that. So that regionally was attractive from a geographical perspective. But really, the energy of this place, back in, for my case, it was the late 90s. The wealth that was being generated, the ideas that were coming out of it, the world-changing ideas, to me, were particularly attractive. So I knew that I wanted to take my MBA over here and work in a business aspect in Silicon Valley. So we came out here, and I originally got a job at a portal back in the late 90s. Portals were the thing. So there was Excite, and I worked at one called Infoseek, and our biggest competitor was Yahoo at the time. So I got a job at the Infoseek portal, mobilizing their content. So very, very early days of taking content and putting it on mobile devices. I'm going to credit my wife, but she bought me a Palm Pilot for my birthday. And that convinced me. I kind of doubled down on my notion of the ability to take this information from the internet in my pocket and have it, at hand anywhere and any time was very powerful. And of course, the Palm Pilot had these massive limitations. I mean, most notably, it wasn't connected to the internet when you were out. You had put it
I
in a
have
cradle
one
when
of
you were
those,
home.
by the
There you
way.
go. Yeah. So you're docking in a cradle at home and you did this and you pressed the sync button on top and then it gorged on the buffet of what was the internet of the day and loaded it up with the things you said you liked. And then you walked away with them. So it was a batch synchronization, a batch sync tech, which was its biggest weakness, but at the time was already pretty impressive that you could walk around with that information. So that device, which I got before I took the job at Infoseek, convinced me that the notion of taking the internet in your pocket was going to be huge and empowering. And so I sought out a job in that. So when I worked at Infoseek, I was hired to be their first mobilization manager, the manager who would take the portal content, if everybody remembers what that means, and put it on a mobile device. So portal content back in those days meant things that people land on the internet to look at in the late 90s. So give me the news, give me the weather, give me my sports scores, give me my stock prices. The people who do lotteries wanted that. But these basic bites of information that got you up to date, that was the main role of a portal in those days. And those were really easy things to mobilize.
You just taught me something new. I've heard the word portal, but I guess I've never heard it used in this perspective.
Well, if you're in Silicon Valley in the late 90s, it was all about portals. Portals are what predated search, what predated Google. And the notion was that you didn't go and look for something. You went to your portal, Yahoo, Infoseek, and you configured your preferences the way you like. And then every day when you land on the internet, when you dial in and or however you connected, the first page you look at had that information that you prefer all in one place. And that was called an internet portal. And it was the darling of the venture capital world and the stock market at the time.
I see portals in movies as an example where a character kind of walks into this portal. There's the archway, and once they go through the portal, they're in this whole other world.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking almost how you're describing is it a similar concept, or am I
I think you're
missing?
reverse engineering the people who named it Portal. Exactly. Like, I think you've just backward decide, that's what they did. They said, what is this thing? And in those days, of course, you dialed up your a few people had broadband, but most people were dialing in. And when they landed on the internet, the first page they loaded, the doorway to the internet was this portal thing.
It's almost like the modern day concept of the algorithm.
Yeah. But it was, it's a ancient predecessor of the algorithm. Yes.
So let's fast forward for a second. Does it ever strike you as funny or maybe surreal that today, in 2024, we can stream almost anything from any device anywhere, knowing what you were working on so many years ago?
No. So,
Wow.
uh, you know, I mean, I staked my career on the mobile internet. I thought I'm going to invest in doing this and building it around this. I said, my wife gave me a Palm Pilot, and I'm like, I get it. I get what this is. I get limitations. I don't see any limitation here that can't be overcome quickly by the technology that's already known and available. It just needs to come together. And so, for me, it's kind of been I'm like a kid the night before Christmas. I saw all this stuff as possible. I just gotta wait, open the present and see when they give me something that they open the present. I know what's gonna be in it. Um, it's gonna be this great thing of this mobile access to any information anywhere. So I did have a vision for the way this would pan out because it's what I would wanted. However, I got to admit, I had blind spots and all kinds of things I didn't see. The negative repercussions weren't something. I mean, I was excited and jazzed by all the upside.
Mhm.
I didn't sit there and ponder, the addiction we could have to our phones and the negative consequences that also come from that. So those were blind spots for sure. But the upside, streaming video, the things we do on our phone, yeah, I expected. Frankly, I expected it to be here sooner. I was a little optimistic.
I think that's so cool because honestly, I never would have imagined. I mean, I know that I remember when I first had access to email and internet, I thought it was so cool, but I don't think I had at the time any concept of where it was going from there. And talking to you, I see that you really, before you said something like taking the internet in your pocket and this concept of taking the internet in your pocket, you really, really, truly believed in it when you first had the ability to do that and you like ran with it.
Yeah. I mean, I went to the point in those, so I'm, don't have an engineering background, economics and business, but, I started cracking open, textbooks on telecommunications and the network technologies that would enable it, and I learned a fair bit about telecom because, as I said, I wanted to know, well, could be possible and what is gonna be possible. And, one of the great things about being in Silicon Valley is you're surrounded by a lot of other dreamers and crazy people who think anything is possible. Um, and my business, my skill for the past 25 years, my specialty has been to take a wide look across the valley and go, well, if these guys are working on better screen, and these guys are working on new radio technologies, and these guys are working on faster processing, and these guys are working on memory densification, like mm, these aren't silos. This is all going to come together in our computers, which are devices we already have, but also in this Palm Pilot, these pocket-sized devices that don't yet exist, going to come together. And what is that going to enable? So it was more just a matter of taking a wide survey of what all these other people were doing in Silicon Valley and saying, well, what happens when you put that together? And that has been at the core of the Kerton Group. But really, when I talk about the organizations we run, it is it's the entire soul of the Telecom Council, of the Auto Tech Council, the Clean Tech Council. It is to say, listen, what all is going on with all these startups? What kind of a future is that going to enable? What startups are likely to be successful in that? And let's bring them in front of in the Telecom Council cases. Let's get them in front of the telecom operators so that they can integrate those technologies in the network and make it happen a little more quickly than it otherwise would have happened. So that broad survey of all the innovators in Silicon Valley is the fuel that we put on the Telecom Council fire and the Autotech Council fire. We say, okay, I found a cool idea. Let's get the word out that this thing exists. Because there's some frustrations. As I said, I thought the future would happen sooner. Um, and so in many cases, we see technologies at the Telecom Council, the Autotech Council. We see technologies. I mean, a startup comes and presents their cool idea, and you go, that is really good. And that's going to change the way we use a car, change the way we burn carbon, change the way we communicate. That's a very interesting solution. Um, I wanted my phone now. Why is it not in my phone today? You'll ask the Starbucks guy, "Can I get this now?" And they're like, unfortunately, we have to find a phone vendor who's willing to give us a try to put us in their phone to prove that real customers will like it." So there's this
Process.
eh, right. So we're like, "Good, what can we do?" And that's what the Telecom Council does, to get you in front of phone makers or in front of AT&T or Rogers or Orange or NTT Docomo. These are the carriers. So that they can tell their phone makers, "Put this in my next phone." They have a little more sway than the startup. And then real customers will try it. If that phone model is successful with that feature, then, you know, a year or two later, I'm going to see it in my phone. But yeah, I see all these technologies young. And I'm like, I want it today in my phone, and I have to wait 2, 5 years to see them. So, but it's that's why I said that. That's the basis of my skills to have that broad view of the technology innovation. Say, what would happen if this all came together and the good ideas were successful?
I know that you wrote many articles for Hector a while ago
Mhm. Yeah.
and that you were a tech journalist. You have so much passion toward it. And I'm a writer and I do think that in order to be successful as a writer, you have to have passion for what you're writing about too.
It helps. Yeah.
Do you happen to have a memory of maybe an article that you either really loved writing or maybe a topic in general that you tried to focus on, or maybe even one that created discussion within the tech community?
Yeah, I have a lot of answers, but I know I have a number one with a bullet, and that was the day before the iPhone launched. I wrote a big article at Tech Dirt about the iPhone, and that's my favorite article I've ever written because I didn't have any inside knowledge. Apple is very tight-lipped, and Apple never participated in the Telecom Council because they notoriously they never go to trade shows as Apple. They don't
Mhm.
present at trade shows. They stay tight-lipped about what they're doing. So some people might have had inside knowledge and not been allowed to say what they thought the iPhone was going to be because they were working on building it with Apple. I had no such obligations. I was aware of all these technologies and what they were capable of doing. As I told you, I was like, oh, these things could be this in the future, and why isn't anybody giving me that? And based on the rumors I heard about the iPhone, I'm like, it sounds to me like they're putting these technologies into a phone, and I believe all these technologies are going to work. So here's what I think the iPhone is going to be. And I wrote that article the day before the iPhone was out, and it was spot on. And so I think I look at that, and it holds up so well. But basically, that's the article I wrote and historically I look back and I'm most proud of that one. It had
That's so
Tech Dirt's,
cool.
yeah, Tech Dirt's a pretty good web blog. It still does policy and politics around technology, and so it has pretty
Yeah,
good
I took a
readership. So I was
peek.
proud.
It's pretty
Yeah,
cool. I've
yeah,
read, like, from time to time a few things on there. I just thought that was really awesome. We've spoken a lot about some not even older trends, but the history
yeah.
of telecom and how things have evolved. Are there any more current trends in telecom that have really captured your attention or that you are fascinated about or interested in learning more about?
So I'll answer this really relatively quickly because telecom is kind of leveled out in terms
Mhm.
of the scope of the changes. Like the history I'm talking about around the iPhone and in 2005 through 2015, a lot happened, and we all experienced it. And which the speeds you have on your phone now are so phenomenal. The access to information you have, it kind of reached the vision um, that I had. So what's happening now in telecom is more invisible to the consumer. It's more at the core of the network. So the
Ah, like
interesting
the
things that are
back
happening
end,
there. Yeah.
like
So
behind
this
the
is stuff.
scenes.
Yes. And this is the stuff that you will experience, but it won't change your life as a user. It will change the way that networks are built. So there's something called network functions virtualization, for example, that is a big thing. It's ongoing trend. But basically the notion is that they used to have dedicated boxes in a telecom network, boxes being a computer, but from Ericsson, from Siemens, from Nokia, from these big companies, Asian companies as well, Huawei and stuff, that did a specific function. So this is the box that makes the sound in your phone when you phone somebody and you wait for them to pick up.
Oh,
There's
like
a
the
piece of
ring.
hardware that gives you that noise. So, and there's a piece of hardware for almost every function in a telecom network. So, they had routing boxes that routed the telephone calls, things that, as I said, played the ringback tone into your phone. So these all sit in these central offices around the world that are central offices that placed near your home that did these functions for your corner of the network. Um, they've long talked about, say, well, couldn't this stuff all run in software? It's going to be such a big change to change it over. But network function virtualization is taking all that stuff, making it work on a virtual machine. So it's basically replicating that machine in software and then having that run on what they call a white box. So basically, you can take any computer, big chunk of computing power, put it in the central office, and all of the old machines that used to be literally physical boxes can now be a virtual machine, virtual computer that is just a piece of software running on that white box. So that is a massive trend, and we call it virtual network function virtualization, but also generally digitization. Basically, everything goes digital. That becomes disentangled from hardware, becomes part of software. And I think Mark Andreessen famously said, "Software eats everything." This is basically the telecom manifestation of that. Everything just falls into and becomes software, and you buy generic pieces of hardware that can just do massive processing. And then, because that's a trend in telecom, they said, well, we still have these central offices and we have these white boxes now that are starting to run everything in software. What? Do we really need all these white boxes everywhere? Like, what about cloud computing? And so now they're thinking, well, we can run telcos just on the cloud platforms, either a proprietary one that the telco owns or even AWS, Amazon Web Services. So in Japan, for example, there's a phone company now called Rakuten, which is a new phone company. But so they launched and they basically run in the cloud. So they don't even have the virtual hardware. They run their virtual machines on the cloud hardware somewhere else. So this digitalization is the one of the big trends. As that not as a user, you're still going to pick up your phone and it's going to work. But this makes the operations in the back end a lot cheaper. A user can say, "Oh, great!
Do
If it's
you
a lot
think
cheaper."
that I
Yep.
was just thinking about something you just said. Do you think that a lot more companies are gonna run to the cloud too?
Yes. Yeah, bit by bit, because a company like Rakuten that's doing it in the cloud enters in and can do a lot of operations more cheaply than more conventionally run. Now, nobody's conventionally run anymore because everybody's done this virtualization, but they're transitioning and they're hybridized and stuff. Where Rakuten is a pure play because they're brand new. They built the network from the ground up in the cloud era. That means they can operate more cheaply. And it also means when there's a new idea of something to run in a phone network, Rakuten says, "Oh, run it in software and off it goes." They don't have to worry about, they don't integrate hardware. Everything's software. So they're able to turn things on and turn things off, try things out. So that versatility and agility they've got as a software only company, it gives them more competitiveness, more flexibility. They're running things cheaper. So now the other companies have to catch up if they want to, if they don't want to lose too much business. So they will adopt a lot of those. They have to adopt a lot of those technologies because of the competitive drive that they've got. As a customer, you will say, "Well, if they're running things cheaper, can I get a price cut?" And the answer is no. Um, you can't. They'll pocket all those gains. And at first you think that sounds sinister, but then if we show you a graph of the amount of data that the average consumer pulls down per month over time, and you see that it's up and to the right, you realize that they have to run things cheaper and cheaper and cheaper just to keep up with the fact that users are sucking down more and more and more data.
Yeah,
So
you need
your
to
phone bill
save space for the data. Yeah.
So your phone bill will stay the same, but you're doing way more data. So actually, on a per gigabyte basis per month, it actually is prices are coming down significantly for the customers, but your bill
Well, we're
is.
talking about we're talking about these trends. I know you were just at CES. Did you happen to make it? I didn't go, but I watched some of the, on-demand videos, some of the
Yep,
keynotes and some of the I call them like fireside chats. I don't know what CES calls them, but that's what I call. Did you
yep.
happen to make it to any and if so, could you share a takeaway or two that you recall?
So I go to so no, I can't do that, sorry, because I didn't go to any of the conferences
That's okay.
because, what I do is I run around the show floor. I try to get my hands on all the products, like, I try to see the stuff and get hands on,
Okay,
like,
then maybe
clients.
some cool products that you saw.
That's
I'm
okay.
okay with
So
that.
yeah, it's I guess one of the most notable things to talk about at CES, I'll talk about one of the products that came out of there that, got a huge amount of press that I'm actually not that, hot on. So we'll talk about it. It's the, it's a Rabbit, I can't Rabbit R1. So the Rabbit R1 I said that probably got the second most press of anything at CES. LG had the see-through TV that I think got the most press. So transparent TV, put that aside, I'm not gonna talk about it, but that got the most press that I saw at CES. Followed by a startup called, with a product called the Rabbit R1. So this thing is supposed to be a an AI tool that instead of being a large language model, it's something they're calling a large action model. So the idea is that where ChatGPT, you can type stuff in and it gives you stuff back, answers, information, write your term paper for you, write an article. Uh, the idea is that some people want AI to do something for them. So what if you could tell an AI like, "So, I'd like to go to Paris next week and do a few things. Can you can you make some reservations for me?" And that
Like
then the
plan the
device was going
trip.
to say, "Yeah, well, more than plan, right? Because plan could be a large language model. Do the trip." So they want a
Oh,
device that could actually go and book tickets for you, pay for those tickets, airplane tickets, but then also,
do all the things.
yeah, get you an opera ticket or whatever you want to do. So a device that can do things like that, but have actions for you. So think of the things you do on apps on your telephone.
Mhm.
They're trying to say this is the app killer. You'll take apps off of your phone, and instead you'll just have an artificial intelligence do the things the apps used to do for you. So if you have a garage door opener app on your phone, so simplify it from a trip to Paris, you have a garage door opener app, you launch it, you press a button, and it opens the garage door. What about instead just saying, "Hey, open my garage door," and having an AI on your phone understand that you have a LiftMaster garage door and understand how to interact with that web page that LiftMaster offers, and to basically go to their LiftMaster's website and look like you and open your garage door from what looks like a web browser. But this R1 is a device. It's a physical piece of hardware they want to sell
Mhm.
you. And so it's a $200 device with the price is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But the notion is well, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to have a second device in a second pocket and I'm going to every night charge two devices and my phone. And I think, wait, I have this thing here, which has a variety of very expensive processes in it. Nowadays, um, you know, not everybody can afford a very expensive phone, but people that watch and listen to podcasts about technology probably have a nice iPhone or a nice Android phone. And you've invested a lot in the processing power, a lot in the memory of that device, a lot in the video processing, et cetera, a lot in the radios. So you have a 5G or 6G radio in your phone. Why do I want to have a second device that maybe has,
Noise.
and then did like this one here, from a brand everybody knows, I don't market for, but it's $1,200.
Mhm.
So is this $200 device going to be anywhere near as good as mine in the chipsets I just mentioned? I think no. So why do I want a hardware device to do these things for me when I've already bought really powerful hardware with? It sounds to me like this is a solution that belongs in software, as ChatGPT is for a large language model. This this action model should also be in software. So I see their idea and I go, that idea is killer. People are going to do this. We're going to get rid of apps that certainly, the ones that use daily or hourly. Oh, I got to see what's on people, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever that they're not going to erase those. They want to be in those apps. But think of the apps that you don't want, that you don't want to
Yeah.
be in. You're just trying to do something, open my garage door, change my pool temperature. I'd love to get rid of those apps and have a large action model that could do the actions for me if I just yell at, work at it, like do this, open my garage door, uh, filter my pool, turn the lights on,
But I'm
and it
actually
figured it out.
wondering, like, I feel like, and I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I have like a Google Home,
Yep.
I think that's what it's called.
Mhm.
And we have a couple things like our shades, our lights, and we've somehow, I guess, entered them all into the Google Home system. And we
Yep.
can talk to our Google Home and have it open
Yes.
and close our shades and turn on and off our lights. I know that what you're describing is a little bit different, but it sounds like it's kind of similar in a lot of ways. So now I'm wondering, why would I need that if I have found other ways to combine my apps already or
So
processes?
I can officially welcome you to the Rabbit R1 Skeptics Club. So you have described
I
exactly what
guess
I
I've
think.
just joined.
Yeah. You've described what I think is gonna happen. I think you're right. So again, this technology and this idea these people have a large action model, I think is brilliant. The standalone device, I don't want, and the extra assistant, I don't want. You use the Google Assistant, other people use Siri. We just want those that gain those capabilities. So I think what typically happens in this is those companies take note of the ideas from the startup like this, an innovation like this, and they either buy them or they integrate them or they copy them and they put it into their technology. And this is where you and I wait. Okay, well, I'll wait till Google Assistant has this. And sometimes it takes too long. So, but this company will figure out that we didn't want to buy a separate device and they'll start selling the software services. They'll start selling theirs as a service and I'll pay them $5 a month for their AI technology, but I won't pay them for their device. So, anyways, that was one of the coolest ideas to come out of a CES. So I love the idea. I think, oh, that's pretty good. And by the way, it's AI based. It's true AI. So it's not just a gimmick where you like the idea is that it uses all of its user base and it studies how when you go to a web page, you can train it, how you would go to LiftMaster Chamberlain, the people who make my garage door open. You go to that web page and you click on some things and log in and say, open the garage door, and it learns from that teaching. And it learns from you and a variety of other users. So if LiftMaster updates their website, it continually learns what it has to do to execute that demand on their web page if they have a web interface or an API. So it actually is studying in the same way that a large language model studies thousands of articles, how people wrote, and then spits it back at you when you ask it to do something. This technology looks at how people do and then spits it back at you when you ask it to do
Mhm.
something. So it is AI. It is learning. It's very cool. It's different than the past where you personally tell, like when I say this, like Google Home, when I say I've got to link these skills to Google Home and link Lift Faster and tell it how to do that, give it my password. This thing is a lot more automated than that and uh, tends to keep up. with changes, so it can keep working because it's always learning how to keep. So when there's a change, it learns how to navigate that change. Very
Maybe
cool.
that's how it's gonna differentiate itself, because
Uh,
if it doesn't differentiate itself, that's where it's gonna fall short, probably.
yep. Yeah.
You
Uh,
mentioned AI. I kinda have to go this route very quickly, but, although I wasn't obviously at CES, I was listening to some of the keynotes. One that I happened to find really interesting was the Qualcomm keynote, and the
yep.
CEO, Cristiano Amon, was interviewed and asked a question about if we were to compare generative AI to a baseball game, which I love because we're a baseball family, which
Yeah.
inning would we be in? And he actually said the first inning
Yep.
headed toward the second. And so I'm so curious if you would have said the same thing or something different. Now that I've heard so much of what you've said about technology
Yeah.
in general and your insights and kind of your forward thinking, I'm curious if you would have this similar response or maybe would have answered it differently.
Differently. Um, I
That was
I'm
my
gonna
guess.
I'm gonna agree with a lot of his what the reasons he had for coming and saying the first inning because it's early days, and
Mhm.
that's true. But I think he and everybody should give a lot of credit to probably 100 years of ideation and thinking and information theory and Claude Shannon, um, Alan Turing, all these people that had all these advances in information theory and automation and computer thinking. People developed computer vision technologies for years and years and years. There is so much that has already gone on that brings us to where we are with AI today. And it's one of these overnight successes that has been in the work for 100 years. So yeah, I don't think it's fair. Um, to all the talent that's gone in the past to say that we're in the first inning. So I would just bump it up a few because I do think it's early days and these things tend to have their impacts exponentially. They start off slow and they grow. So maybe a baseball game, very linear. So, you have every inning has a procedure and the score counts cumulatively, like additively. A run in the first inning counts the same as a run in the eighth. But, the advance of technology is exponential. So I mean, obviously I'd take more time, but I would disagree with the analogy of a baseball game because, um, that's not how this progresses. It starts slow and ends fast. But if I had to say baseball again, then I'd go third inning, giving credit to what's already happened in the past.
When I first heard him say that, at first I said, okay, I kind of understand where he's going with this because there's so much more that could come and that will come and that could potentially happen from it. But I also knew in the back of my head, AI is not brand new.
No,
The
no, and
sensationalism around it is, and
yes,
the speed in which companies are adopting it is 100%,
yeah,
but it's been around for a lot longer than so many people realize, and for that reason, I also would have probably said, I'm not sure where yet, I would have to think about it
yeah,
more, but I probably would have said probably a little bit further in.
yeah. And to make excuses for him, which we don't need to, but I would say that maybe he's just talking about the consumer facing side of things. Like it's been invisible to the average person until now. And this is from a consumer facing, this is the first inning. You're just
Yeah,
seeing, you're
oh,
just
no, it
scratching the
was a
surface.
great
So,
keynote. That's why I'm saying
yeah,
I gave him a lot of credit. I thought the entire keynote
yeah.
was excellent.
So it could just
And
been his frame of reference if it's consumer thing,
yeah, no, definitely. But I had to ask you because I know how passionate you've been about tech for years and that you really truly know the history of it. And so I am so happy that you had a chance to share your journey with us here at 160 characters. I'd love to give you an opportunity to share some broader reflections on the state of technology and innovation. So, looking ahead, what
Mhm.
do you see as the most exciting or promising developments in telecom? In other words, how do you see the industry evolving over the next decade or so? And I know you kind of mentioned when we sort of talked about current trends, but this is more of a where do you see it going from here question.
Sure. Okay. So in the telecom space, we talked about it. I think a lot about virtualization, cloudification, the entire network becoming just running software, lowering the costs of networking and making and then continuing to undergird all the other innovations. Their networks and the technology they provide and invest in undergird all these other ideas we're going to talk about in the future. Like without the connectivity, a lot of these things like this Rabbit R1, the makers of that device assume that you're going to have a strong internet connection wherever you are to make their thing work. It's a given. So that phenomenal platform that those networks give is what excites me about telecom, and they're improving it. They're going from 5G to 6G. They're already starting to talk about 7G, which they have to do. It's not fanciful or crazy. They
Mm.
actually start laying down what's going to be in that 7G standard and start discussing it now. So these things are going to progress and provide that platform for other people to innovate and build on. And you have to give a lot of credit for that because, like I said, without it, we wouldn't be talking about connected cars or Internet of Things or smart agriculture. It needs the connectivity layer.
I love those responses. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Derek. This has been wonderful. I hope you enjoyed being a guest on 160 characters. I learned a lot. I learned that word portal at the beginning. So thank you for that too. And I wish you well.
Thank you. Thanks for all the questions. It's always a pleasure to just ask about myself and my business. Everybody enjoys talking about that. So I enjoy talking about the stuff we're doing and the technologies that undergird us and that drive us forward. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
My last quick question for you. If somebody wants to reach out to you or your companies or the councils, what is the best way for them to reach you?
I think just to look on LinkedIn. I'm Derek Curtin. I think about that spelling here, and they can look there and. They want to see what we do at the Kerton Group, including the councils we run. They can just go curtaingroup.com and it's all linked through there.
Excellent. Thanks so much. We
Oh,
will link
but
it in the
nowadays I
show
am writing
notes.
more. So I am writing more at LinkedIn. So I encourage people to, follow me on LinkedIn. I put a few articles there on the subjects we talked about.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I'm going to include all the links in the show notes too. So thanks for that.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks again, Derek.